purport by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. We shall note with profit that in the first 3 chapters of the second canto, a gradual process of development of devotional service is being presented. In the first chapter, the first step in devotional service for God consciousness by the process of hearing and chanting has been stressed, and a gross conception of the personality of Godhead in His universal form for the beginners is recommended. By such a gross conception of God through the material manifestation of His energy, one is enabled to spiritualize the mind and the senses and gradually concentrate the mind upon Lord Vishnu, the Supreme, who is present as the Super Soul in every heart and everywhere, in every atom of the material universe. The system of Pancha Upasana, recommending 5 mental attitudes for the common man, is also enacted for this purpose, namely gradual development, worship of the superior that may be in the form of fire, electricity, the sun, the mass of living beings, Lord Shiva, and at last, the impersonal Super Soul, the partial representation of Lord Vishnu. They are all nicely described in the second chapter, but in the third chapter, further development is prescribed after one has actually reached the stage of Vishnu worship or pure devotional service. And the mature stage of Vishnu worship is suggested herein in relation to the change of heart. The whole process of spiritual culture is aimed at changing the heart of the living being in the matter of his eternal relation with the Supreme Lord as subordinate servant, which is his eternal constitutional position. So with the progress of devotional service, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual development from the sense of material enjoyment by a false sense of lording it over the world, and an increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Vidhi Bhakti, or regulated devotional service by the limbs of the body, namely the eyes, the ears, the nose, the hands and the legs, as already explained herein before, is now stressed herein in relation to the mind, which is the impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body. It is expected by all means that by discharging regulated devotional service, one must manifest the change of heart. If there is no such change, the heart must be considered steel-framed, for it is not melted even when there is chanting of the holy name of the Lord. We must always remember that hearing and chanting are the basic principles of discharging devotional duties. And if they are properly performed, there will follow the reactional ecstasy with signs of tears in the eyes and standing of the hairs on the body. These are natural consequences and are the preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage, which occurs before one reaches the perfectional stage of prema, love of Godhead. If the reaction does not take place even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. That is the opinion of the Sandarbha. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name, certainly the reaction of feelings of separation will not be visible by tears in the eyes and standing of the hair on end. The bhava stage is manifested by 8 transcendental symptoms, namely inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end, feeling in the voice, trembling, paleness of the body, tears in the eyes, and finally trance. The Nectar of Devotion, a summary study of Srila Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, explains those symptoms and vividly describes other transcendental developments, both in steady and accelerating manifestations. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakura has very critically discussed all these bhava displays in connection with some unscrupulous devotees imitating the above symptoms for cheap appreciation. Not only Vishwanath Chakravarti but also Srila Rupa Goswami treated them very critically. Sometimes all the above 8 symptoms of ecstasy are imitated by the mundane devotees, Prakrita Sahajiyas. But the pseudo symptoms are at once detected when one sees a pseudo devotee addicted to so many forbidden things. Even though decorated with the signs of a devotee, a person addicted to smoking, drinking, or illegitimate sex with women cannot have all the above mentioned ecstatic symptoms. But it is seen that sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated. And for this reason, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti accuses the imitators of being stone-hearted men. They are sometimes even affected with the reflection of such transcendental symptoms. Yet, if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. When Lord Chaitanya met Srila Ramananda Raya of Kavur on the bank of the Godavari, the Lord developed all these symptoms, but because of the presence of some non-devotee Brahmanas who were attendants of the Raya, the Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes they are not visible even in the body of the first-class devotee for certain circumstantial reasons. Therefore, real steady bhava is definitely displayed in the matter of cessation of material desires, shanti, utilization of every moment in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, avyartha kalatvam, eagerness for glorifying the Lord constantly, namagani sadaruchi, attraction for living in the land of the Lord, pritistad vadastistale, complete detachment from material happiness, virakti, and pridelessness, manashunyata. One who has developed all these transcendental qualities is really possessed of the bhava stage, as distinguished from the stone-hearted imitator or mundane devotee. The whole process can be summarized as follows. The advanced devotee who chants the holy name of the Lord in a perfectly offenseless manner and is friendly to everyone can actually relish the transcendental taste of glorifying the Lord. And the result of such realization is reflected in the cessation of all material desires, etc., as mentioned above. The neophytes, due to their being in the lower stage of devotional service, are invariably envious, so much so that they invent their own ways and means of devotional regulations without following the acharyas. As such, even if they make a show of constantly chanting the holy name of the Lord, they cannot relish the transcendental taste of the holy name. Therefore, the show of tears in the eyes, trembling, perspiration, or unconsciousness, etc., is condemned. They can, however, get in touch with the pure devotee of the Lord and rectify their bad habits. Otherwise, they shall continue to be stone-hearted and unfit for any treatment. A complete progressive march on the return path home back to Godhead will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. Thus ends the Bhakti Vedanta purport. Om Ajnanatimmirandhasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namini Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharini Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarini Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. This verse spoken by Shaunaka Muni is telling, after you have received the dust of the feet of the Lord's pure devotee upon your head, which means when you have received the mercy of the pure devotee, then Ado Shraddha Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is happening, then the next step should be Anartha Nivritti. Unwanted things within our heart should be gradually diminishing. Further, the devotion to Lord Krishna will become more and more steady, fixed up. You will develop taste, you will develop more attachment, and that should lead you to the stage of bhava. Bhava is described as the stage of ecstasy. Prabhupada gives the English equivalent of bhava. It is the preliminary stage before one develops love of Godhead. When bhava intensifies, that becomes prema for Lord Krishna. So this is the step-by-step process. Because you have received the mercy of a pure devotee and following all the regulatory principles of devotional service, then gradually it should elevate you, graduate you to the pure devotional platform. So now Shonaka Muni is giving the understanding, even though you have received the mercy, but somehow for some reason that your progress in devotion is not manifested in terms of the ecstatic symptoms, then your devotion is for time being suspended. It is not progressing forward. So directly, very bluntly, Shonaka Muni is telling that heart, bata idam, certainly that heart, hridayam, is ashmasaram. It is steel framed, which means only modern days we may think artificially there is heart transplant and we can have some with technology we can have one artificial heart. No, which means when this word ashmasaram hridayam is used, which means this technology was existing even 5,000 years ago. Prabhupada says. Then how this word has come? So that heart is steel framed, certainly, where you, even though harinama dheyai grihyamanai, in spite of chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration, with attention. The words used here is very significant. Prabhupada uses every word very carefully. That heart is steel framed in spite of one's chanting the holy name of the Lord with concentration. Na vikriyeta atha. Na vikriyeta atha. So when there are symptoms of ecstasy happens, supposed to happen, like there is no symptoms like tears, netre jalam gata ruheshu harshaha. Right? When there is tears in the eyes and there is shivering of the body, hair standing on end, these symptoms are not visible. So basically it is telling that, as Prabhupada clarifies in the purport, if reaction does not take place, even after continuous hearing and chanting of the holy name of the Lord, it may be considered to be due to offenses only. So in our progress of devotion, bhakti, we need to be very watchful with regard to our progressive path. Prabhupada says a complete progressive march. March means what? March fast. Left, right, keep going forward. A progressive march on the return home back to Godhead. It will depend on what? It will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by a realized devotee. So, in our progressive march on the return path home back to Godhead, the next milestones of our progress in bhakti is not visible, or rather it is not manifesting, then somewhere the instructions are not being followed properly. One reason, or as Prabhupada points out, it may be due to offenses, or it is done, as Prabhupada explains, you invent your own ways and means of devotional regulations without following acharyas. This is offensive. Invent your own way of devotional regulation without following acharyas. These are the reasons. So very nicely, analytically, Prabhupada is giving out the explanation in the purport. We are all here in this movement trying to follow the instructions of Srila Prabhupada, right? So we are in the process of spiritual culture. The spiritual culture purpose should be, Prabhupada says, should be at changing the heart of the living being. So this change of heart in the living being should be from, as Prabhupada says, the reaction of change in the heart is exhibited by gradual development or gradual detachment from the sense of material enjoyment. Sense of material enjoyment is coming from where? From false sense of lording over the world. So change of heart should happen in the matter of your detachment from material enjoyment and increase in the attitude of rendering loving service to the Lord. Right? So this should be our step by step or gradual progressive march, as Prabhupada says. One more place Prabhupada says, positive progression. Right? So this we should be looking out for, or we should be aspiring to go forward in this direction. So the entire process of bhakti is aimed to bring the sadhaka to this change in the heart. Change in the heart in the matter of gradual detachment from material enjoyment to increased attitude of rendering loving service to Krishna. Right. So Rupa Goswami very nicely, scientifically describes our beginning of devotion is with the Vaidhi Bhakti. Right? The Vaidhi Bhakti is that stage of devotion wherein you don't know about what is devotion, the purpose of life and all these things. So Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu explains that there are two kinds of devotional service. Devotional service through regulative principles. This is called Vidhi Bhakti. Prabhupada explains about this. Vidhi Bhakti or regulated devotional service, wherein your body, mind and senses are all engaged in Lord's service. This Vidhi Bhakti has two divisions. Prabhupada explains the two divisions are executive and effective. What is executive bhakti? Anybody remembers? Sadhana bhakti. Sadhana bhakti, performing it regularly, every day, repeatedly. Same thing repeated. That is called execution. This repeated performance of sadhana bhakti will bring you to the next level of bhakti known as bhava bhakti. This is called effective portion. Prabhupada explains the effective portion of devotional service is called bhava or ecstasy. And the other portion of other kind of devotional service is called, anybody remembers? Raganuga bhakti, spontaneous loving service. These are the two devotional aspects which Rupa Goswami explains. So coming to the aspect of sadhana bhakti and bhava bhakti, sadhana bhakti should lead you to the process of bhava bhakti gradually. When you are repeatedly doing, every day getting up for Mangalarati, every day chanting Hare Krishna, every day hearing Bhagavata, every day doing your services, gradually you will develop a sense of attachment. So Prabhupada explains in the Nectar of Devotion, there is a statement in Tantras that ecstasy or bhava is the first symptom of pure love of the personality of Godhead. So what does this bhava mean? That's what this verse is explaining today. Shaunaka Muni is telling, Netre jalam gataruheshu harshaha. Symptoms of tears in your eyes and hair standing on end. In that stage, one is sometimes found shedding tears or shivering. Prabhupada explains, not always are these symptoms manifest, but occasionally. Prabhupada gives the example of Ambarish Maharaj. When Ambarish Maharaj was put into difficulty by Durvasa, he began to think of the lotus feet of Krishna, and thus there were some changes in his body, and tears were falling from his eyes. So these symptoms are activities of ecstasy, bhava. So they are visible in the shivering of the body and the shedding of tears. So when these symptoms, ecstatic symptoms, after appearing externally, they stay within the mind, and the continuation of these ecstatic experiences is called samadhi. Prabhupada explains, this stage of appreciation becomes the cause of further exchanges of loving affairs with Krishna, which the entire Nectar of Devotion is explaining in a very detailed manner. Okay. So, Prabhupada explains further from the Nectar of Devotion that this stage of ecstasy, bhava stage, it can be attained in two ways. One way is constant association with devotees, pure devotees. Other way is by the special mercy of Krishna or by his pure devotees, by the mercy of pure devotees. The general normal way is elevation to the stage of ecstasy by association with pure devotees. Whereas rarely you see special mercy of Krishna. There are three ways wherein you can get special mercy of Krishna or his pure devotees, and you can be elevated to the stage of ecstasy. Prabhupada explains that this development of devotional attitude of ecstasy in a person as a special mercy on any person can be bestowed in three ways. Simply by speaking by the Lord or his pure devotees, or simply by glancing, or simply by wishing good. Prabhupada goes on to explain or give examples from different Puranas as quoted by Rupa Goswami in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. How about Shukamuni, it was mentioned, he did not go through any regulative principles of devotion, but by birth he was a pure devotee. Right? So Shukha Samhita, it is mentioned that Narada Muni is speaking to Vasudeva that it is by the good wishes of Lord Krishna, your son Shukha Muni has become a pure devotee by birth. He did not go through any regulative principles. So like this example of Prahlad is given, how by the mercy of Narada Muni, what did he do? He instructed his mother, Prahlad's mother, when Prahlad was in the womb. He sympathetically instructed mother, and his wish was that child within the womb can also take advantage of the instruction. Right? The pure devotee wished, well wishes. That's why Prahlad became a pure devotee. He was always desiring auspiciousness for Prahlad. So he developed all the characteristics of a pure devotee. So somebody, sometimes this question comes up. How Prahlad, being the son of a demon, Hiranyakashipu, he became a pure devotee. The reason is given here. Prahlad was in the womb of his mother. That time Narada Muni specially blessed this child. Right? He wished that this child will become a pure devotee. So Prabhupada says this is natural attraction which Prahlad had developed. So like this, Prabhupada goes on to say, simply by good wishes of a pure devotee or Lord Krishna, how this is exceptional. Generally the process is what? One should execute devotional service rigidly. We're talking about coming to the stage of Bhava Bhakti, by association of pure devotees, just like in our process of Hare Krishna movement, ISKCON, how Prabhupada has established the whole system. You execute devotional service rigidly in the association of devotees, so that there will be certainly progress in one person to gradually rise to the next level of advanced devotional position. Right? So the Prabhupada says this is the regular process which everybody should follow. Prabhupada says the exceptional aspect of special mercy, you cannot you cannot simply wait and sit idly. Oh, Krishna will give me sometime mercy, let me simply sit. Prabhupada says we should not sit idly and simply wait for Krishna's special mercy. Special cases, of course, special favor from Krishna will come. But we have to perform our regular duties, which means our sadhana, service, sadhana, whatever aspects are there, should go on very rigidly, Prabhupada says. And Prabhupada further says, one should devotedly execute the regulative principles of devotional service. At the same time, hope for Krishna's favor or his devotees' favor. This should be our mood. Prabhupada gives an example of Narada Muni, how in his previous life he was engaged in the service of great devotees and used to hear their talks and descriptions of Bhagavata. So he became very attached within his heart about the descriptions which was given by those great Paramahamsas, and he was very eager to hear them. So we hear in the first canto of Bhagavatam how Narada Muni himself describes, as soon as I heard them with great attention, the influence of the modes of Rajoguna, Tamoguna completely disappeared. I became fixed in devotional service. So, it is very essential that we constantly associate, Prabhupada says. The constant association is important. With pure devotees who are giving us instructions day in and day out what to do. Right? So in this way, the progress in spiritual life in our case is that we have to constantly take instructions from the pure devotee and go on in our spiritual life. So in this verse specifically, Shonaka Muni is making a point. Even though we are performing our devotional activities of hearing, chanting, if it is properly performed, there will follow reactional ecstasy with the signs of tears in eyes and standing of hairs in the body. Prabhupada says these are the natural consequences of the bhava stage. Preliminary symptoms of the bhava stage. Right? As we just now read. So, if this is not happening, then Prabhupada explains it is due to offenses only. Offense means we are not, or we are disobeying the instructions as given by Guru Sadhu Shastra with regard to following the rules, regulations, or as Prabhupada says, you invent your own way and means of devotional regulation without following the acharyas. Right? The mind always gives whimsical directions. Ye shastra vidim ustrajya vartate kamakaratha. whimsical aspect Krishna explains in Bhagavad Gita, that we would like to do things on our own way because we are conditioned in that way for so many lifetimes. Whereas when you are performing bhakti, Vaidhi bhakti, Prabhupada says, seriously, strictly, rigidly follow whatever has been given as the rules, regulations for performance of bhakti. Right? So, if that is being done properly, Prabhupada explains one more nice point. In the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, if the devotee has not been very careful about evading the 10 kinds of offenses at the feet of the holy name. So it's very important that every aspect of devotion we try to get into details of how I should perform them, how I should execute them. Right? Sadhana bhakti means executing the same thing repeatedly again and again. If you have learned wrongly, if you have not understood the details of how to execute it, you will be doing it wrongly. So Prabhupada means to say, in the beginning of chanting of the holy name of the Lord, the devotee has not been very careful about evading. Right? So this is important. If in the very beginning of what you are doing, whatever you are doing as sadhana, or at the stage whenever it comes to you that, oh, this is something wrong which I am doing. So you should correct yourself and then go forward in the path of bhakti. As Prabhupada says, a progressive march of bhakti, progressive march on the path home back to Godhead. So Prabhupada further explains there are also certain imitative personalities, the sahajiyas, prakrita sahajiyas, who make a show of these symptoms. As Prabhupada says here, sometimes these symptoms are willfully imitated by prakrita sahajiyas, even though they are not at all having any qualification to to manifest these symptoms. Or rather, the symptoms should come out as a natural consequence, Prabhupada explains, in the performance of bhakti. Not that it is artificially or willfully imitated. So Prabhupada says, such people are also known as stone-hearted. They are sometimes even affected by the reflection of such transcendental symptoms, yet if they still do not give up the forbidden habits, then they are hopeless cases for transcendental realization. So basically when Shaunaka Muni is telling that your heart is steel-framed, or your heart is stone-hearted, it means the practice of bhakti is not giving any significant or tangible change in your behavior, in your actions. As Prabhupada explains, the mind is the impetus. The impetus for all activities of the limbs of the body is the mind. His mind is the controller. He is mind is in one sense directing all the senses. So, the different senses descriptions were given in the previous verses, how this sense is not engaged in service of Krishna, how it is useless. It was being explained by Shaunaka Muni. And specifically with the mind, when the mind is not properly engaged in the proper service of Krishna, then it is actually not in its proper shape. That's what Shaunaka Muni want to say here. And the mind has to be trained in a particular way. The mind has to be cultured, as Prabhupada says, the whole process of spiritual culture. Change of heart. Our heart is functioning in a particular way. Our mind is functioning in a particular way now. That change of heart has to happen. Change of heart from your mind is now constantly thinking in terms of lording over this material world, in terms of how I can enjoy. That should be transformed into service of Krishna. That is the point. So Prabhupada further explains this change of heart is manifested in different ways. Rather, it is seen. If you are actually progressing in bhakti, then you should manifest certain symptoms, certain aspects in your progress of bhakti. So Prabhupada gives example of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's meeting with Ramananda Rai. Both were very elevated personalities, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Lord Krishna himself. Ramananda Rai being a very great devotee, When both of them met, there were definitely the symptoms of ecstasy being manifested. But Mahaprabhu suppressed them because he did not want to display them in front of, Prabhupada says, there were some non-devotee Brahmanas who were all attendants of Ramananda Rai. The Lord suppressed these symptoms. So sometimes, even in the first class devotee, for certain circumstantial reasons, they may not be manifest. The symptoms of tears or shivering, or Prabhupada explains there are 8 symptoms, Nectar of Devotion explains. When you come to the ecstatic stage, then there are 8 symptoms. Inertness, perspiration, standing of hairs on end like this, trembling. All of them are very nicely described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was coming in front of Jagannath Rath, how he was manifesting the symptoms of ecstasy. Right? Very detailed description is given in the Nectar of Devotion. But here, the discussion is that a sadhaka who is on the path of devotion, if the symptoms of ecstasy are not manifest, the reason may be that he is not following the rules regulations, or he's invented some rules regulations, disregarding the acharyas, without following the acharyas instructions. So the sure path of progress in bhakti, that we are properly following rules regulations, should be manifest with some more symptoms. Some characteristics are there, that I am actually following bhakti process properly. So this is very nicely explained in the purport here by Srila Prabhupada. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, while giving the instructions to Rupa Shiksha, he explains these symptoms. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, if one actually has a seed of transcendental emotion in his heart, the symptoms will be visible in his activities. Seed of transcendental emotion. This is what Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. Yanhara hridaye ye bhavankura haya tanhate eteka chinha sarva shastrikaya. Even that seed of devotional ecstasy has started in you, means these symptoms should be manifest in your activities. What are they? They are 9 in number. First one is called Kshantihi. Kshantihi, Prabhupada explains them as being perseverant or reserved, or in other words, forgiveness. Right? Prabhupada gives explains from Chaitanya Charitamrita only. When a person is undisturbed even in the presence of various causes of disturbance. Right now our situation is that we are constantly being disturbed. Yes, but we have to come to a stage wherein the level of disturbance is reduced. You are not disturbed with external things. You remain patient even at the even in the lot of disturbances around you. Even at the last point of his life, Parikshit Maharaj was maintaining patience. He was undisturbed. This condition of mind wherein you are undisturbed even in the presence of when you have causes of disturbance, this is called reserved or perseverant. So Prabhupada gives example of Parikshit Maharaj, wherein he is talking about his last stage of life, wherein he is telling that anytime I may be bitten by the snake, let the curse of Brahmana's son fall upon me, I do not mind. I only request that at the last moment of my life, all of you will kindly chant the holy name of Krishna, I may realize his transcendental qualities. This is the first point. It's called Shantihi. Second one is called utilization of time. Avyartha kalatvam. Prabhupada says, one who is come to this stage of advancement in bhakti, he has developed this aspect of utilizing his time always. Whole life is engaged in service of Krishna with not a moment wasted on any other engagement. This is left to us. See, we have 24 hours of time in our disposal, at our disposal. How you are using every moment of your time? Prabhupada says, with not a moment wasted on any other engagement. I'm reading this from Nectar of Devotion, chapter 18. Very nicely Prabhupada explains all these points. Prabhupada says, within the mind is always thinking of Krishna. With his body is either offering obeisances or bowing down before the deity, engaging some or other service. With his words, he is reciting the prayers to Krishna like this. Every moment, he is seeing how I can be engaged in Lord's service. So, Kshantihi, then Avyartha Kalatvam. Thirdly, Viraktihi, detachment. Prabhupada explains, the senses are always desiring sense enjoyment. But a devotee who is on the path of bhakti, he has to develop detachment from these aspects of material enjoyment. Or his senses are no longer attracted by material desires. This state of mind is called detachment. Prabhupada explains very emphatically, detachment does not mean artificially keeping oneself aloof. Artificially, okay, now I will not see, now I will not do, but next opportunity, next moment, you are again indulging in it. Even in the presence of such allurements, if one can remain unattracted by material attachments, right? Prabhupada says the real position of a mature devotee is that even in the presence of all allurements, he is not at all attracted. So you can test yourself within whether when you are in the presence of allurements, whether your mind is agitated, disturbed, how you have developed the sense of, you remain unattracted. One is disturbance, another is attraction. We are talking about disturbance, the previous one, the first aspect, Shanti. The third symptom of Virakti means you are detached. Remain detached from material attachments even in the presence of such allurements. Not at all attracted. Krishna in the 3rd chapter explains about this. Attraction and repulsion. One of the verses. Prabhupada says this is the actual criterion of detachment. The 4th point is called Mana Shunyata or pridelessness. Because as we are going forward in bhakti, definitely Krishna will bestow you with some good qualities. Maybe as a good speaker, as a good collector, whatever it is. But in spite of possessing all these qualities in the progress of devotion, you should not be proud of your position. That is called pridelessness. So Prabhupada in the Rupa Goswami gives the example of one king by name King Bhagiratha. Padma Purana is mentioned. That emperor, he was such a big emperor, he was king of all the other, controlling all the other smaller kings. Yet when he developed the advanced stage of bhakti, he became a sadhu, mendicant. And he went out begging even to the homes of his political enemies and untouchables. Not easy. Right? He was so humble that he respectfully bowed down before them. So practically Prabhupada says in our preaching movement, we have to go and beg outside as preachers. So begging involves being ready to be insulted by persons at whose home one has come. So you have to expect insult, definitely. That is natural. But one has to tolerate such insults for the sake of Krishna. So the devotee of Krishna can accept any position in the service of Krishna. There is no preference. I will do this, I will do that. Anything, whatever Krishna's service, I will do. This is called pridelessness, Mana Shunyata. And 5th quality is called Asha Bandha. These are all nice qualities which we have to aspire to develop. Prabhupada says the strong conviction that one will certainly receive the favor of Supreme Lord. Yes, Krishna is going to definitely, save me. I go to get favor of Krishna. Because people are also having false hope with Maya way of working. Maya Sukhaya. But the devotee has a strong conviction that certainly I will receive the favor of Krishna. This is called great hope or Asha Bandha. So Prabhupada explains very nicely. Because I am trying my best to follow the routine principles of devotional service, I am sure that I will go back to Godhead, back to home. Every day I should make this statement. Materialists also have great hope, no? I will become this, I will do that, do this, think of positive, will become positive, so many things they say. But for devotee, I am trying my best to follow the routine principles of devotional service. I am sure I will go back to home, back to Godhead. Prabhupada explains how Rupa Goswami has given a nice understanding about his great hope. He expresses hopefulness in this way, Rupa Goswami. You should follow in the footsteps. He says, I have no love for Krishna, nor for the causes of developing love for Krishna, namely hearing and chanting. It is our situation now. I don't have love for chanting and hearing. And the process of bhakti by which one is always thinking of Krishna and fixing his lotus feet in the heart is also lacking in me. As far as philosophical knowledge or pious works are concerned, I don't see any opportunity for me to execute such activities. But above all, I am not even born of a nice family. Therefore, I must pray to you, Gopijana Vallabha. I simply wish and hope that some way or other I may be able to approach your lotus feet. And this hope is giving me pain because I think myself incompetent to approach the transcendental goal of life. Prabhupada explains, this is the way a devotee should be praying. One should continue to hope against hope that some way or other he will be able to approach Krishna. It's called Asha Bandha. Right? Then the sixth symptom is called Samutkantha. Samutkantha means having great eagerness to achieve success in devotional service. One we understood about Asha Bandha, great hope that I will be able to approach Krishna. Another is eagerness to achieve success in devotional service. Prabhupada explains the Rupa Goswami's famous verse. Tatra laulyam ekalam mulyam. The only price which you can pay actually is the eagerness. Eagerness is the price for achieving success in devotional service. Right? This is the sixth point. Eagerness for achieving desired success. And seventhly, Namagane Sadaruchihi. Always developing taste for chanting the holy name of Krishna or Krishna's pastimes or telling about Krishna, talking about Krishna, you just have developed taste. Asakti tad gunakhyane. And again, you have developed great attachment in describing the glories of Krishna. Tad gunakhyane. That is point number 8. And lastly, Pritis tad vasati sthale. Prabhupada clarifies, Pritis tad vasati sthale means you affection for those places where the Lord resides. That is a temple or a holy place like Vrindavan. So these are visible in a person in whose heart the seed of love of God has begun to fructify. So, like this, we can aspire to come to more and more greater degrees of these various symptoms which are, which is manifest in a mature devotee, because we are supposed to mature ourselves in the progress of bhakti. And then gradually Krishna will bestow. Again, we cannot artificially imitate these symptoms of ecstasy. It has to be bestowed as a blessing by Guru and Krishna. Right? But definitely our sincere, rigid adherence to the instructions of Guru Sadhu Shastra, as Prabhupada says, this will depend on the instructions of the revealed scriptures directed by realized devotees. So we should never invent our own way of and any means of devotional regulation. Rather follow the Acharyas, Srila Prabhupada's instructions strictly, and things will be going smoothly. So I'll stop here. Grantara Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.